My name is Alice Miller, and I am 37 years old. 20 years ago, when I became pregnant at 17, my parents called me a disgrace and threw me out of their lives like trash. Today, they stood in the marble lobby of St. Jude's Hospital **, demanding to see their grandson, the chief of cardiothoracic surgery, whom they had seen featured on the news. My mother clutched her Hermes Birkin bag like armor, while my father checked his Patek Philippe watch nervously, both dressed to impress the son of the daughter they had erased from existence. But they had no idea what awaited them in the will of the woman who took me in when they let me fall. Before I continue, if this story touches you, I'd be happy for your support and tell me in the comments from where and at what time you are listening. October 2004, the night everything changed. Let me take you back to that October night in 2004. I was in my parents' living room, the one with imported Carrara marble and a chandelier that cost more than most people's cars, clutching a positive pregnancy test with a trembling hand. "You're lying," my mother hissed first. Her voice was as cold as winter frost. No daughter of mine would be so vulgar. But the second test confirmed it, and so did the third. My father didn't scream. That would have been beneath him. Instead, he walked with calm, controlled steps to my room and returned with my suitcase, the one they had bought for my future university visits. He placed it with surgical precision in front of the front door. "You have 10 minutes, he said, turning on his heel. "Take only what fits in there. Leave your house keys on the table." "Dad, please." "You are no longer our daughter." He turned the photo frame on the mantelpiece, the one with the white shirts and the fake smiles, face down. "Our daughter wouldn't throw herself at some random boy and destroy everything we've built." My mother leaned against the grandfather clock, boredly examining her freshly painted nails. "Don't call us. Don't come back. We'll tell everyone you went to study abroad." Oliver *, the boy who had promised me eternity and already had a top-tier university acceptance letter in his pocket, vanished too. His parents had lawyers. His future was more important than mine or our babies. He blocked my number that same day. 10 minutes. That was the time they gave me to pack up 17 years of being their daughter. I took a few clothes, my grandmother's necklace they had overlooked, and $100 from my jewelry box. The sound of the lock clicking behind me sounded like a judge's gavel, final, irrevocable. The guardian of Central Park. That night I slept in the park, under the gazebo where Oliver had kissed me for the first time. I stayed there for 3 nights. Then I woke up because someone was gently shaking my shoulder. It wasn't the police or a stranger with bad intentions. It was an elderly lady, perhaps in her 70s, in a cashmere coat with a look of genuine concern. "Child, you'll freeze out here." Mrs. Eleanor Ross *** was walking her elderly poodle ***, as she did every morning since her husband passed away. When she saw me huddled on the park bench using my suitcase as a pillow, something in her broke, or perhaps something healed. "I'm fine," I lied, my teeth chattering. "No, you're not." She examined my face and then my stomach. Though I was only 2 months pregnant, she knew immediately. When I started to cry, really cry, after holding every tear for 3 days, she sat beside me on that freezing bench and held me as if I mattered. "Come," she said finally. "Buster and I could use some company for breakfast." Her car smelled of lavender and leather. The heated seats felt like a miracle. She took me to a residential area, to a house that was as large as a small park. 8 rooms for a widow and an old poodle. "I lost my daughter," she said calmly as she guided me inside. "A car accident 5 years ago. She was pregnant too." The room she showed me was already ready, not for me, but for someone who needed a home. A crib was set up, a closet full of new maternity clothes. "This is yours now," she said. "No questions, no conditions. Everyone deserves a second chance." "Why?" I whispered. She touched a photo on the dresser, a young woman with Eleanor's eyes and smile. "Because Sarah would have wanted it this way." A new life and a prodigy son. That night, I slept in a bed for the first time in 72 hours. Buster lay protectively at my feet. Eleanor didn't just give me a roof, she gave me a future. While my parents told the country club I was in Switzerland, I was learning to breathe again in a room decorated with stars. Luke came into the world during a February storm, screaming and perfect. Eleanor held my hand during 18 hours of labor and whispered strength when I had none left. She cut the umbilical cord and was the first to hold him. "He's brilliant," she said immediately. "I see it in his eyes." And she was right. Luke walked at 9 months, read at 3 years old, and entered gifted programs before he was even in kindergarten. While I earned my high school diploma at night and then took online business courses, he devoured knowledge like other children devoured cartoons. Eleanor owned 3 restaurants: Rossi's Asterisk downtown, a bistro on the promenade, and a cafe near the university. I started as a receptionist, but she taught me everything about inventory, shifts, and profit margins. "You aren't just working here," she'd say. "You're learning to run an empire." At 7, Luke was sewing his teddy bear with real stitches he learned from videos. At 10, he was reading my anatomy books. At 16, medical school accepted him early. The return of the vultures. It was that year that Leo Grant ** entered our lives. He was working on updating Eleanor's will. She insisted on adding new clauses every year since she took us in. Tall, calm, with warm eyes and terribly bad jokes, he made me laugh for the first time in years. "Your son is extraordinary," he said over a coffee that turned into dinner. "He owes it to his grandmother." "I wasn't talking about Eleanor," he replied. He just smiled. "She mentioned something interesting about her will, about protecting the family you choose." Everything changed when the national newspapers printed the headline: 20-year-old surgeon becomes youngest department head in the country. Luke's photo covered half the front page. My son, in his surgical scrubs, standing in front of the cardiac clinic he had already renovated. The article cited his full name: Dr. Luke Ross ** MD, PhD, the last name I had legally changed to match Eleanor's, the name my parents thought they had erased forever. Hours later, the story went viral. Minutes after that, my phone vibrated with an unknown number. I almost deleted the voicemail. "Alice, it's your mother. 20 years of silence and now this. We need to talk about our grandson." Our * grandson, not her son, not Luke. Our * grandson, as if he were a lost investment they had suddenly recovered. Then came the email to my restaurant's public address, cold and professional. "Dear Alice, we hope you are well. Recent news of Luke's impressive achievements has reached us. As his grandparents, we feel it is appropriate to resume contact. Sincerely, the Board of Miller Industries." The company they deemed more important than their own daughter. Leo found me crying in my office, not from sadness, but from rage. "They want him now because he's successful," I said. 20 years of nothing, and suddenly they claim him. "What do you want to do?" "Remove them from my life again." He pulled me close. "We can do that, but first, let me look at Eleanor's documents." He said she had prepared something for exactly this scenario. The stalking begins. That night, Luke worked a 16-hour shift and saved 2 lives. He didn't even know his biological grandparents existed, let alone that they were circling like vultures. They started small, a reservation at * Rossi's under a fake name. I recognized my mother's emerald ring before I saw her face. She had aged poorly. Botox was fighting a losing battle against bitterness. "Good evening, I'm Alice." "Ali," she said, "we know who you are." My father laid down the menu like a sentencing. "We need to talk about Luke." "You need to leave." They didn't leave. Instead, packages began appearing at the hospital. A Rolex Submariner for him, a Montblanc set, a first edition of * Gray's Anatomy worth thousands, all signed, "With love, your grandparents." Luke brought them home, confused. "Mom, someone is sending me expensive things. Should I be worried?" "Return everything," I said. "Every single thing." Leo intercepted the next move, a legal letter where the grandparents demanded visitation rights. Leo laughed out loud while reading it. "They are claiming an established family bond," he said. "A bond they destroyed themselves." He pulled out a document, a copy of the agreement they had signed 20 years ago. They didn't just kick you out, Alice. They legally severed ties with you and any future children. But they pushed further. They hired a private investigator to monitor Luke's routine. They contacted the hospital board, presenting themselves as Dr. Ross's grandparents, wanting invitations to charity events. The line was crossed when my mother approached Luke directly at a cafe near the hospital. "You look so much like your grandfather," she said, blocking his path. "Excuse me, do we know each other?" "I'm your grandmother, dear. Your mother has kept us apart." Luke called me immediately. "Mom, a woman is claiming to be my grandmother. Should I call security?" "Yes," I said, shaking. Hash the conspiracy. The next call came at 2:00 a.m. Of course, Oliver always had terrible timing. "Ali, it's me. Please don't hang up." Years later, he still thought "it's me" meant something. "What do you want, Oliver?" "I saw the reports on Luke. He's incredible. Our asterisk son," he said. Back then, Luke was only my problem. Now that he was saving lives, Oliver suddenly remembered his genes. "He doesn't even know you exist," I said. "It's unfair. I was 18. My parents threatened." "To what? Kick you out? Force you to sleep in parks while pregnant?" Silence. "I'm divorced now," he said finally. "My company went bankrupt. I've lost everything. I just want to know him. He's my blood." "Blood? You blocked my number when I needed you most." "My parents contacted me." The confession hung between us. "They think if I were involved, you'd be more open to a reconciliation. They want to help me financially if I convince you." I hung up and called Leo. "They're working together," I told him. "My parents and Oliver are planning this together." "Excellent," Leo said, surprisingly calm. "Conspiracies leave trails. Forward me everything." The next morning, Oliver sent a long email about his parental rights. He copied my parents, and at the bottom, hidden in his signature, was the line that explained it all. Consultant, Miller Industries, family relations. My parents had actually hired the man who abandoned me to try and manipulate me. The hospital lobby showdown. Tuesday, 3:00 p.m. Luke was 8 hours into a complex pediatric cardiac surgery when my parents entered the VIP lobby of St. Jude's. "We are here to see our grandson, Dr. Ross," my mother announced loudly. "We are the Millers of Miller Industries." The receptionist called security, but my parents were prepared. "This is an outrage," my father thundered. "We have donated millions to this hospital. Our grandson is the chief surgeon. We demand to speak with him." Visitors stopped to watch. Doctors whispered. Someone pulled out a phone to film. My mother pulled out a monogrammed handkerchief. "For 20 years we have been kept from him," she wailed dramatically. Security arrived at the same time as I did, with Leo by my side. "Ma'am, sir, Dr. Ross is in surgery." "Then we will wait," my father announced, dropping onto a leather sofa as if he owned it. The head of security turned to me. "Mrs. Grant, how should we proceed?" My mother's tears dried instantly. "Grant, you remarried. You gave our grandson another man's name." "He never had yours," I said quietly. "You guaranteed that yourselves when you signed him out of your lives." A murmur went through the crowd. The surgery doors opened. Luke stepped out, still in his scrubs. He saw the chaos. He saw me. "Are these the people stalking me?" "Yes." "Then I want them removed." He didn't even give them a look. The media trap. My parents didn't leave. They called the news stations from the parking lot. An hour later, news vans were at the entrance. My mother had changed into an Armani suit she had prepared. "We are devastated," she told the reporter. 20 years ago, there was a misunderstanding. We reacted poorly, but we have tried for years to establish contact, and we are denied access to our only grandson." She wiped her eyes. "Dr. Ross is a pioneer," the reporter asked. "You must be proud." "Infinitely," my father replied, though he had never seen Luke save a life. "The Miller family has always valued excellence. It's in his blood." "What would you say to your daughter today?" My mother looked directly into the camera. "Alice, dear, we forgive you. We want to reunite our family. Please don't punish Luke for our mistakes. They forgive *me. The segment aired at 6:00 p.m. By 7:00, it had thousands of views. The comments were ruthless. Family is everything. Let them see the grandson. Why are you so cruel, Alice? Leo closed his laptop. They just made a fatal mistake. What? Because they went public? No, because they claimed to forgive you. That is a mission of guilt, and we have the documents to prove what they really did. The confrontation. Luke came home exhausted. Mom, 3 operations were delayed because reporters tried to enter the surgical area. Maybe we should meet them once. I could tell them personally to leave us alone. Luke, they signed papers saying you legally don't exist to them. He was silent. Can I see those papers? Leo was prepared. He took out the folder. Luke read the statement slowly. October 15, 2004. We, Robert and Margaret Miller, hereby waive all parental rights and duties toward Alice Miller and any child born or to be born. They signed this while you were pregnant with me. Yes. And this line, we recognize no financial, emotional, or legal obligation. They wrote that. Their lawyer drafted it. They signed it. Luke set the document aside. Tell me everything, Mom, from the beginning. So I told him about the 10 minutes, the suitcase, the park bench, and Oliver's disappearance. Everything I had kept from him came to light. Oliver Smith is my biological father. Yes, I said calmly. The tech entrepreneur who just declared bankruptcy. He looked at me. I knew, Mom, I'm not stupid. I know how to use Google. He showed me Oliver's LinkedIn profile. He's been looking at my profile every week for 6 months. I thought you. Tell me when you were ready. He looked at the documents again. So Eleanor was my real grandmother, the only one who wanted you. # the secret will. Leo opened Eleanor's safe with the combination 70205, the day Luke was born. He pulled out a leather-bound document. She updated this every year, Leo said, but this clause she never changed. He flipped to page 7. In the event that any biological family member who has previously abandoned, repudiated, or rejected my adopted daughter Alice Miller or her son Luke Ross attempts to claim any relationship or assets after their success, such person shall be permanently and irrevocably excluded from any inheritance or financial benefit from my estate. She knew this would happen, I murmured. She planned for it. Look. Leo pressed play on an iPad. Eleanor appeared on the screen, recorded months before her death. If you are watching this, she began, her voice firm despite her illness, then Robert and Margaret Miller have crawled out from under the rock where they've been hiding all these years. Hello, Mr. and Mrs. Miller. Yes, I know exactly who you are. I hired investigators the day I met Alice. I know about the 10 minutes, the suitcase, and the photo you turned down. My throat closed. Even dying, she had protected us. You threw away a treasure, Eleanor continued. I found it. She became my daughter in every sense of the word. Luke became my grandson. And you are nothing, shadows, just signatures on a document that guarantees you can never hurt them again. Alice, dear, they will come with money and promises. Don't believe a word. You have everything you need. The restaurants, the investments, this house, $15 million all in your name. Be free. The gala. The annual hospital gala was days away. 500 guests, media presence. Luke was to give the keynote speech. We will invite them, I said, holding the invitations. All 3 of them. Leo raised an eyebrow. Are you sure? Eleanor left us the weapons. It's time to use them. I wrote each invitation by hand. Dear Mom, dear Dad, please attend the gala to receive your inheritance from Eleanor Ross's estate. Dear Oliver, your presence is required regarding Luke's inheritance and your legal fatherhood. They'll think they've won, Leo said. Let them. We booked table number 1 for them, right in front of the stage. Impossible to miss. The night of the gala, the ballroom of the hospital glittered. At table 1, my parents sat like royalty. My mother wore a vintage Chanel suit. Beside them sat Oliver, looking nervous in a rented tuxedo. Ladies and gentlemen, the announcer said, please welcome our keynote speaker, Dr. Luke Ross. Luke went to the podium in his surgical scrubs, no tuxedo, just the uniform he earned. "Good evening. I want to talk about family today," Luke began. "Not the family you are born into, but the one that stays with you when you need it most." My mother beamed, convinced he was talking about them. 20 years ago, a 17-year-old girl was kicked out of her house because she was pregnant, he continued. She slept in parks. She had nothing except the life growing inside her. Then she met Eleanor Ross. Eleanor became my grandmother. She gave my mother a home, dignity, and a purpose. Everything I am, I owe to two women, my mother, Alice, and my grandmother, Eleanor. The big screen behind him showed Eleanor's photo. "Tonight," Luke said, "I announce the creation of the *** Eleanor Ross Foundation ** for teenage mothers. $5 million in initial capital for housing, childcare, and education for young mothers who have been rejected by their families." Then Eleanor's video message started playing for the whole room. "When Alice needed a family most, where were the Millers?" Eleanor's voice boomed. "When Luke took his first steps, where were they? They were nowhere. They are just signatures on a document that says Luke doesn't exist to them." My mother tried to stand. My father held her down. "I leave everything to my real family," Eleanor said in the video. "And to those who rejected them, you get exactly what you gave them, nothing." The final blow. My mother grabbed a microphone from a nearby table. "We are his grandparents. We are his blood. You have turned him against us." I stood up. My voice carried even without a mic. "You gave me 10 minutes to pack my life. You signed papers rejecting my unborn son." "That was different," my mother screamed. "You were a disgrace." "I was your daughter." Oliver tried to slip toward the exit, but security blocked him. "Mr. Smith," Leo said into the microphone, "don't leave yet. We have your emails, too." The screen lit up with the emails. 10% of recovered assets. Alice is emotional. Just press the right buttons. The room erupted in gasps of disgust. "And now," Leo said, "to the documents you signed 20 years ago." The waiver of rights filled the screen. Every line clear, every signature sharp. "This waiver is perpetual. It has no expiration. You legally severed yourselves from every future generation. You cannot claim to be grandparents because legally, Luke is not your grandson. You established that yourselves 20 years ago." Leo checked his watch. "It is 8:47 p.m. At 8:54, if you are still here, we will file criminal harassment charges. You have 7 minutes to leave this gala and this city forever." The silence was broken only by the ticking clock. My parents looked at the hundreds of phones, filming their humiliation. "Mr. Smith," Luke said, "I knew who you were since I was 15. I saw the life you built while my mother built hers alone. You are a sperm donor who is bankrupt enough to sell access to a son you never wanted. The authorities have already been notified of your fraudulent bankruptcy filings." Oliver looked like he was going to be sick. "Leave," I said, "now." A process server entered the room, followed by 2 police officers. He handed restraining orders to all 3 under the eyes of 500 witnesses. "You'll regret this, Alice," my mother spat. "The only thing I regret," I said, "is the 17 years I spent thinking I needed your love." As they were escorted out, the room exploded in a standing ovation. Epilogue. 3 weeks later, the news broke. Miller Industries' stock had plummeted. My father was removed as CEO. The term 10-minute parents trended for days. They had to sell their mansion to pay for lawyers. Oliver faced 3 years in prison for his financial crimes. 6 months later, we sat down for our weekly dinner, a tradition Eleanor started. Luke was talking about a 17-year-old girl he met at the hospital who was sleeping in her car. "She moves into the foundation housing tomorrow," I said. The portrait of Eleanor hung in our living room. "I'm getting married next month," I announced. Leo smiled and poured the wine. "I thought you'd never ask." We toasted with Eleanor's crystal glasses. This was family. Not perfect, not traditional, but chosen. And somewhere far away, 2 people I once called parents were finally learning the lesson I learned 20 years ago. Some decisions can never be undone, But the best ones, we get to choose those every single day.